Wisdom. It's such an interesting concept. One of the things that the Quran tells us is لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعْثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا. Allah has blessed the believers by sending from them a messenger. بَعْثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. So that's in Surah Ali Imran, but there's a similar iteration in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, in the chapter called the Friday Congregation. But basically, Allah sent this messenger, min anfusihim. There's a shadh qira'ah that says min anfusihim, from their souls, but also from the most precious amongst them. And yatlu alayhim ayatihi. He recites to them these signs. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and he purifies them. يُزَكِّيهِمْ, tazkiyah. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمْ, and he teaches them. Al-kitaba wal-hikmah, the book and the wisdom. So one of the things, it's not enough to know simply the book. You have to have the wisdom that accompanies the book. There's a lot of people that have no wisdom in their behavior. They might be very devout Muslims, but they don't act wisely. One of the things that Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya, I've heard him say this many times, he says, our scholars, many of them know ما قال الله ولكن لا يعرفوا لما قال الله. Many scholars know what God has said, but they don't know why he said it. And the why is very interesting, because in Western tradition, traditional wisdom is about causes, the why. It really is about why. Scientists today, what they call empirical science, is all about how or what, but it's not about why. They can't tell you why. They can explain things, but they don't know why. And so in this, we're told that the Prophet was sent to teach, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the book and the wisdom, the hikmah. وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Even if they had been in manifest error before this book. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah says, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَمَا أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ يَعِظُكُمْ بِهِ. So udhkuru, be reminded of the blessings of God upon you and what He has revealed to you from the book and the wisdom. يَعِظُكُمْ بِهِ. He is exhorting you with it. And so wisdom here, according to Imam Shafi'i in his famous book called the Risala, which is really the foundational book of Usul al-Fiqh, or the fundamentals of jurisprudence, he said the hikmah here means the sunnah of the Prophet. So the wisdom is how the Prophet acted. And one of the things about the Prophet ﷺ is that he did, in every situation, he understood it to be a unique situation. He was not somebody who simply applied the same thing to every situation. So I'll give you an example. Some people came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said they doubted this meat that they had, and the Prophet said, Samillah wa qul Samillah thumma kul. Just say Bismillah and then eat it. When they left, Aisha radiallahu anha asked him, why did you say that? He said, they're new in Islam, and then also he understood that hunger was a real serious problem in the Arabian Peninsula. So he was making it easy for them. Just say Bismillah and then eat it, because they were at one level. And this is how he understood things. And a lot of us, people become new Muslims and suddenly they're expected to be like the Sahaba, even though the people that are teaching them certainly aren't like the Sahaba. I mean, I had a situation many years ago, it really broke my heart, but I had a situation where this woman became Muslim, and the first thing she asked me about was makeup. And there was other women in the room, it was because I was teaching a class, and it just struck me as odd why she would ask that. And so I said, no, don't worry about makeup, it's not a problem. Well, the other woman got really angry because apparently they told her that makeup was haram. Whereas I would never, like a new Muslim, that's just not what you want to focus on. they have to get established in their religion. A little bit later, she actually said Shahada with me. A little bit later, I asked about her, and they said, oh, she left Islam. And I said, why? And they said, oh, they said she had to divorce her husband. So these are the type problems that we have in our community of just not having hikmah. Hikmah is such an important thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again in Surah Al-Baqarah, says, يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ أَوْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولَو الْأَلْبَابِ. So He gives wisdom to whomever He pleases. And whoever has been given wisdom has been given a great thing, a great good. But only those who have deep inner understanding, albab, lub is like the inner core. People of innermost core, they're the ones that recollect this truth. And so it's really, really important for us to recognize that wisdom is very important. So what is wisdom? Well, I just want to look at what in traditional Western tradition, because hikmah was very important in Greece. In fact, the philosophia, the philosophy is the love of Sophia, of wisdom. And that came from Pythagoras, because originally the sophists called themselves wise, but Pythagoras thought it was arrogant. So he said, I'm not wise, but I'm a lover of wisdom, out of his humility. And so wisdom, Sophia in Greek, is according to Aristotle, it's the highest level of the intellect. So Aristotle defines, and our Muslim tradition took this taxonomy of the intellect from Aristotle. So we'll find this in our books. Aristotle defined 5 intellectual virtues. So 2 were practical, what he called techne and phronesis. This is what we would call like fen, and then practical wisdom, hikmah amaliya. So it would be like craftsmanship or artisanship. So knowing how to do something, like a carpenter has a kind of techne, like and teknon in Greek meant an artisan, right? That's where you get technology, is the study of craft, right? And so an architect is the master craftsman. So arche means ruler, and techne is craft. So it's the ruling craft. So the architect is he's the ruler of the craftsman, because he's the one that has the whole picture. So the carpenters are down there building the building, but it's the architect who has the building in his mind and in his blueprint. He's the one that sees the whole picture, so he's the master. So that techne is a type of intellectual virtue, of knowing how to do something. And then phronesis is practical wisdom. So for instance, in medicine, when a physician is taken to court, they will always have these expert witnesses to determine whether it was malpractice or not. And what they'll say is, would a prudent doctor have done this? In other words, somebody who had practical wisdom, who had what we call prudence, prudentia, from the Latin prudentia, which is Sophia, or phronesis in Greek is prudentia in Latin, which is where we get our word prudence, which is different from wisdom. So it's practical wisdom. The Arabs call them both hikmah. And then you move into the higher order of the intellect, which is, in Greek it's called nous, and then the episteme, and then the Sophia. In our tradition it was hads, which is the intuitive power. In other words, it's knowing things, like for instance, we know that the whole is greater than the part. We just know that. You can't prove that. There's no proof for it. It's simply a self-evident truth. Like you either get it or you don't. If you don't, then most people would consider you microcephalic. It's just something, for whatever reasons, your intellect never matured enough to grasp those. And there are people like that, unfortunately. So the next is episteme, which is scientia in Latin. So the scientia in Latin is basically what we would call ilm. It's knowledge. And so that type of knowledge, science, is basically certain knowledge through causes. So it's knowing something through causes. And so that means you know the why. So for instance, science is basically knowing why. So for instance, if I say, Inna Zaydan daraba Amran, if you know why Zayd is mansoob and Amr is mansoob, then you know the why of grammar, that Inna and her sisters make the subject mansoob and the predicate marfu'. That's the why. And so you'll know that. And Aristotle said that's why a wise man can teach, because he knows the whys. W-H-Y-S. He knows the whys. So his wisdom is in knowing the whys. He's wise because he knows the whys.